This Camaro needs the LT2 intake, which I have right here, and a Corvette LT2 intake lid or cover, but this one's broken, so we can't use this one. Now, I bought this one used, and I was unaware that it was broken until it showed up, so then I went ahead and bought a new one. So what I need to do now is everything. I got to do all the grinding, we got to put in the fitting, I've got all the parts back here needed for it. We're going to throw it on this car. Let's get going. On these covers, pull up, and it slides out. All 8 coil packs need to be disconnected. This is a lock right here. Pull that up, and then you just push on the little button, and that will disengage. Do that for all 8. Followed by little Christmas tree clips underneath here are holding this to the intake cover. Just pry that up. And you want to do that for all of them, and that will get the harness free from the intake itself. For these clips on the intake, right there, pops free. Lines are disconnected by just pushing on the side and pulling up. Pushing on the gray tab sticking out, pulling up. This one can stay connected to the intake. We're going to pull this off now. These are just 7mm. The connector for the throttle body is the same style as this, where you pull the red lock back and then push that down. We're going to disconnect that, and I'm going to unbolt this since it has to be swapped to the new intake anyway. Gray tab on the back side of this one will allow this to come straight up. Can't do it one-handed, so I'm going to do that. Mine is disconnected now. I left it just free to come up. When I unbolt the intake, I'll be able to pull everything up straight up. And for that, we're going to do that right now. 5 of these 10mm bolts on each side comes out. But first, we must do the purge solenoid. This has a line into it. For the gray, there's a 10mm on the top of it to remove. That can come through here with an extension, 10mm through there. Pull that off the intake, and that's free. One less vacuum line to disconnect. You're going to squeeze down on the gray and pull that off. You'll hear vacuum kind of pop out, and that's it. So this is free. We're going to go ahead and lift this up and pull this out, and we'll pull this underneath the fuel line here, which actually we could just do this like this. So I have it unbolted. I'm going to pull this up. Should come right out. All right, so to disconnect this line, push that in, and the line slides out. We can see the height difference on the 2 intakes, LT1 here, LT2 intake here. Let me grab a light. You can see going in there, the difference in height is the LT2 intake has 210mm runners. They're all equal length runners, when the LT1 has 225 runners and 185. So there's 2 runners that are 185mm long. It's very odd, but it's good to have all matching runners on the LT2 intake. Now is a good time to put rags in here to fill those holes so nothing falls in. You can see this small amount of dirt right there. You don't want any of this getting down into your intake. We're going to need to remove this in order to cut off the backside here, so that way we can get the intake manifold to fit properly. We're going to need to swap the bolts over, so I'll go ahead and remove those from there, get them ready, and then we will get the backside ready to be ground down. Just so you know, it does get a little messy. Be prepared. Thankfully I covered that up. I got quite a mess everywhere. I could have done this somewhere else, but I didn't. And so here's my first set of grinding on it. So I'm going to go test fit this, see how this is. I hit a couple areas. I did a little bit more on this, which people typically don't do that, but I'm doing that for a little bit of extra clearance maybe. With the foam, I rounded this off just a little bit. If this fits, I'm going to do a final, just clean it up, and then we'll get it ready for the drilling for the fitting. Test fit is good. I do not have the foam on the bottom because I want to make sure that this sits flush. And I was getting an issue where I could rock this back and forth, and it was this tab right here. Just need to be cleaned up a little bit. Now I'm going to work on the foam piece. Here's where we ended up right here. I only sanded down to this edge here, and then I sanded these down a little bit. Also had to bring these down for the foam to fit. These little areas in there. And this is basically it, but I just want to give you a warning on that little nipple right there. You don't want to hit that on the ground and break it. So what I did was I just set it on the cover piece that came in the box. Now here's how I cut the foam to fit, and I did do a test fit on it with everything in place except for the gaskets, and we're sitting pretty good. So I'm happy with that. I did retain the foam behind the pump. Going back to the manifold with the damage on it, now I did a little bit of research, and what I believe happened here was they had an LT4 pump in there. And if you look at the LT4 pump versus the LT1 pump, it is taller, and therefore I bet that's where that little corner dug in right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the gaskets on my other intake, and actually no gaskets yet. We need to put the fitting in. Let's get to the fitting. Now I'm using the GPI fitting. This is definitely well worth it because then you can retain your factory line and there's no hokey smoky going on. So what I have is a 23/32 drill bit, and then I have the 1/2 inch 14 tap right here, and then we'll go ahead and put that in the exact same spot that this one is at. Drill is complete, or the drill hole, so we just need to thread it for the fitting. 1/2 inch 14 NPT comes into play. I used blue Loctite to seal it up, got it on there, ready to go. Intake gasket part number 12626354. I did not get a throttle body gasket. I forgot to get one, but we're just going to reuse that one. If I have any issues, that's easy to get to later on. These are a little bit more difficult to get to later on, so I'm going to go ahead and swap these. Just set it in place. I realized that I didn't swap the bolts over, but this is a good chance for me to show you can push on the back, you can push on the front, and it does not rock. That tells me that it's sitting flush on there. Good to go. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and put the bolts in, and then we'll roll. For this, I just used an extension, just a regular 1/4 inch extension, set it on the bolt, tap it through. Let's get the vacuum line inserted in. That's an easy just push in. And that's in. Push into place and lock that. I'm gonna have to do that with 2 hands, so I'll do that right now. And then I'll get the map sensor installed. The extension harness ran over to here. Some people run the extension harness underneath. I didn't want to risk that and try to get that figured out, but they'll come through there, I assume, but we're not attempting that. So mine is going across the top. All right, now we got to connect this pipe to this pipe, and what I'm going to do is use these little connectors along with some silicone hose. There it is, tucked away all nice and clean. Now, obviously, you can route this any way you want. I decided to go behind this line. But it's super easy to disconnect if you want to change the routing of it. Silicone hose is very flexible and it'll work with you. So we've got that route too. However, I kind of like it. Well, I don't know how I like it now. Maybe we'll just leave it like that. All right, throttle body is bolted up. Intake pipe is on. Had to reroute that just a little bit, had to move it because it's now up higher. Everything is in place. I opted to not use the Corvette engine cover just because this is a Camaro, not a Corvette. So I was going to do that for test fit purposes, but I decided not to. And we are set to go. So now all I got to do is fire this up, let it idle for a while. But I'm going to use a scan tool to relearn the throttle body because the idle may be a little different. All right, so now we're in here. We could do electronic throttle reset. We're going to do idle learn. Because I cleaned up the throttle body, so this is best, as well as airflow may have changed. And you can see throttle body idle airflow compensation was at 61%, so it was fairly dirty. So we're going to go ahead and learn. It's going to drop that down to 0. Now when I start it up and it warms up, it's going to go through the learn right away. steering just to make the most out of it. We will do a fuel trim reset. Immediately the idle changed and everything, so it's performing its reset right there. So it's going to go ahead and learn as I drive it. Pulls hard to 6,500 RPMs, full throttle, shifts immediately, and it still has power at 6,500 RPMs. Before, I felt like it would kind of die off a little bit right before the shift, but this was like jerking on the shift. It's pretty good. Definitely happy with that. Cruising is definitely, there's really no change to it at all. There's no like surgy feel. There's nothing really changed with that.